Yeah.
Once again, I take an opportunity on behalf of the organizing committee to welcome another distinguished resource person, Dr. Naveen Kumar Sir. Dr. Naveen Kumar Sir is an Associate Professor, Department of Psychology, Dr. Bhim Rao Ambedkar College, University of Delhi, with 22 years teaching experience. He has made a contribution in the field of different psychology, such as media psychology, social psychology, Indian psychology, positive psychology, etc. Dr. Naveen Kumar Sir did his post-graduation in psychology and also did his PhD in psychology from the University of Delhi. He was author of several books like a book on criminal psychology, book on secondary course in psychology, etc. He is also a member of expert committee of the Council of Social Science Research. A large number of research scholars have done their research works under his supervision. Dr. Naveen Kumar Sir delivered lectures on various topics such as mob psychology, during riots, positive psychology, karma and creativity, pedagogical practices, opportunities and challenges, social media, impact on human behavior and society, women empowerment, intelligence, concept and its application, role of ethics in governance and organizational culture, etc. He has also conducted various workshops on some relevant topics, the role of positive psychology, mental health, self-management, emotional intelligence, ecological psychology, and effective management stress, etc. You are most welcome, you sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Parul Bhuiya,
Thank you, sir.
my dear friend, Dr. Apurva Datta, Amulya, distinguished participants for this webinar, and the previous speaker, Dr. Saikia ma'am. It is indeed a great moment for me connecting to this organization, and they have assigned me a duty that you have to speak on a topic called mental health and healthy lifestyle this evening. I think this webinar is, unique in its organization, because generally our webinars are conducted in the daytime or evening, but this is, approaching very late in the evening. So let it be as it may be. We must try in our half an hour, 40 minutes, whatever time. What is the time, Madam Parul? 40 minutes?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. So in this 40 minutes, I will try to discuss things related to mental health and healthy lifestyle. And I'll try my best to be of some importance and so that you can relate. It is very important to understand and realize that mental health, mental illness, and healthy lifestyles, it is not like, something and a concept in unitary existence. It is a relational concept which is also determined and affect social, cultural, epistemological, and all other aspects of our existence. So mental health and well-being, mental health and hygiene is not something just a unitary problem in its own existence. It is interdependent problem, relational in nature, and this anthropological, metamorphosis from healthy body to disciplinated body needs to be understood in a broader way. What is mental health? What is mental illness? What is the concept of madness? Was it existing right from the age? Or is it a concept which is universal in nature? Or is it a concept that has been created during the time of Renaissance in the 17th and 18th of century. So contemporary medicine created a medical personage or medical personality considered as master of our health and hygiene. So it is a created concept. It is a relational concept. It is a created concept. A miracle of medicine guaranteeing the guarantee of our health and well-being. And doctor knows everything and they are authorized to intervene for our wellness. This concept was popularized, and there is no theory of knowledge which emerges just like that. It has power relations, it has political relations, it has social relations, and truth of illness and its solutions it is only found in the space and corridors and ecology of hospital setting. So this is a misconstrued notion. Medical regimen creates norms with domination of doctors, nurses, patients, and all other kind of people who are working in that environment. And paradigm of institutions, wellness and illness is a faulty paradigm. So illness and wellness should not be perceived merely in the terms of the prescriptions and proscriptions defined and decided with the paradigms of doctor's point of view or medical point of view or scientific medicine point of view. So in this medical point of view, all kinds of dissenting voices within the institutional paradigm are either destroyed or segregated, that okay, he or she. So everything is problematized in a problematic manner, that he or she has some problems, so they need some treatment. So conditioned matrix of illness and wellness has only solution with medical interventions is not true. Medical interventions are useful, but these are useful only in a particular context and with certain kinds of limitations. So medical interventions are the panacea of all our problems is a misconstrued notion. And mental illness and the relationship between therapist and the mentally ill persons and the therapist and as well as doctors, they are the only solution providers, and it has no other aspects of relationship with the broader society, that is ecological society, that is social structure, the cultural matrix, the spiritual aspects. So this is not isolated in nature, a problem which is located in the domain of hospital setting. So mental illness and wellness is a fluid and culturally embedded property. To distract, deviance to disorder is the agenda of medicalization. So whenever somebody has problem, that okay, then you have a problem and you get a solution from the medical point of view. And medical point of view is considered as the scientific point of view and considered as the only solution. So relation between power and knowledge exists, which leads to production of illness identity. So the power of medical science and the medicalization model is so high, is so heightened, that we are always that create illness identities in the society through mechanisms of control and dependence. Power is not only legal, power is not only limited to state, it has several other powers of disciplinary power of bodies. Proliferation of panopticon has led to the formation of disciplinary regime, that you ought to eat like this, you ought to behave like this, this is the healthy lifestyle, this is unhealthy lifestyle. So many do's and don'ts are prescribed with the regimen of medicalization model, which is not a true representation of the reality. There are other forms of reality that also play a role, rather more important role, in our medical health aspects, mental hygiene aspects, and illness aspects. So various categories of rewards and punishments are created through control, coordination, and observation within, which creates a dependence of us on the medicalization model. everyday examples of existence and experience of power within the processes of compulsory admission of treatment and people under mental health have emerged. Clients regulate their conduct in according to the norms of the mental health professionals. So client is always at the receiving end and the domination of medical health professionals is always at the dominating end. And power relation is decentered in such a way that client may be, monitored by a number of people, doctors, nurses, social workers, social psychologists, and all kinds of people, in which they become objects of faceless gaze and anonymous and diffuse observation that creates within the client uncertainty about who is monitoring them. So if you are in a medical setup, so many people are doing their work that you don't know that who is monitoring you in what way, and your voice is always a minor voice, but the fact of the matter remains that you are the most dominant important person in this process. So uncertainty about who is monitoring them is a very important concept. Similarly, as power knowledge, relations, and historical proliferation of transmutation of confession have become so pervasive that we have become a singularly confessing society. You must have noticed that in the medical professions and the psychology, psychiatry discipline, lots of importance is being associated with confession, disclosures that leads to liberation. But this is not a fact. Every kind of confession and disclosure not necessarily will lead us to a stage of liberation, or it's a myth. The obligation to confess is now so deeply ingrained within us that we no longer experience it as a constraining power, but as a true voice of our innermost selves that demands to be expressed. So whenever you meet a psychotherapist, whenever you meet a psychiatrist, a lots of emphasis is paid on that you confess, you disclose, and the whole of dynamics of psychiatry and psychotherapy emphasizes a lot on this process. This process of confession within the contemporary society is so complete that reluctance to seen as the effect of a constraint that holds the confession in place and which can finally be articulated only at the price of a kind of liberation. So in mental health profession and psychotherapy can be understood, it must be understood from the power knowledge relation in which client is invited to disclose or confess their thoughts and feelings so that they can be observed, monitored by the psychotherapist. Within this process, we forget to take note that psychotherapists, we think that psychotherapists are all neutral people. They don't have any perspective. Just now I was listening to Madam Sakia. She was claiming herself as a Skinnerian. So Skinnerian perspective was dominating. Somebody will say psychoanalytic perspective. Somebody will adopt a. So psychotherapists are always treated as a neutral class of people that they don't have perspective, which is not a fact. That they are value free, which is not also a fact. Passive observer, rather fact remains that they all possess a body of knowledge or a conception of normality and abnormality according to their own framework of thinking and priority. A confession, disclosure is always constituted in two stages. The revelation of confession has to be coupled with decipherment of what is said. Hence, psychotherapy does not play the role of interlocutor, but as the authority, who requires the confession, prescribes and appreciates it, and intervenes in order to judge. So psychotherapy is not a neutral, value neutral profession where people do not have their own perspectives. They do have their own perspectives, and they try to impose, intervene, requires the confession, and this confession prescribes, and it operates as an intervening mechanism where people judge you. The client is indirectly invited to adopt the power knowledge relations as inscribed in themselves that psychotherapy is said to embody. Client is also invited to monitor and observe their own thoughts and feelings, and the basis of psychotherapy's framework adjudicate for themselves which are to be understood as normal and abnormal, and to regulate their thoughts, feelings, and behavior accordingly. So many kinds of interventions are taking place, but it is considered that psychotherapist's role is value neutral. Psychotherapist's framework is not to interfere, but the fact of the matter remains that they do adjudicate, that they do judge, they do have their perspectives and feelings, which does affect the neutrality of this entire process. In this way, clients playing with both the role of psychotherapist and client as internalizing the particular psychotherapy's framework, categorization techniques, and strictures, and therefore as becoming the principle of their own subjection. So that means client has to conform to the perspectives of the psychotherapist. So whatever their viewpoint may be, if they are subjected to their own liberating processes. Current psychiatric discourses are historical manifestations of a whole range of institutions, economic requirements, political issues of social regulation. Mental illness is not an universal atemporal objective category. Rather, it has emerged in a particular historical context, within a particular cultural context. The concept of mental illness is inextricably bound to the political concerns, norms, and values of that culture and society. The concept of mental illness did not exist in themselves, but constituted or produced through discourse. To categorize a person mentally ill is to subject that person a variety of presuppositions that characterizes that person as dependent. Mental illness term diminishes the capacity to act in an autonomous manner for a person, therefore dependent to varying degrees on the advice, treatment, and medication given by the mental health professionals. On the basis of historically and constituted psychiatric discourses, a human being is given the identity of being mentally ill. In being tied to a specific identity, human being becomes subject in the sense that they are made subject to others as by control and dependence. Mental health professionals should be aware of the importance of the understanding of psychiatric discourses, categorizations, and presuppositions as a historically and politically constituted, therefore as subject to continual revisions. So the lot of is being talked about the process of what you say pandemic called COVID-19. So lots of prescriptions are being provided, but the pursuit of well-being does not seem to be closer to the realm of medical science regimen. We are trying our level best, but we are unmindful of the relational factors. What I have been trying, that it is a constructed proposition, it's a constructed paradigm that medical science has created right from the philosophy of consumerism and unmindful culture consumptions, lifestyle problems that has harmed our environment. So mental health problems are not divorced from the social, cultural realities, environmental realities, and spiritual reality. So these are interrelated. Whenever we start perceiving them in a in a unique way or in an isolated way, that it is the problem of an individual and it has solutions from the medical health professionals or psychotherapists, then we are doing a great injustice to understand. So what is the concept of pain? What is the concept of, anxiety? So it varies. What is the resilience capacity of the people in Assam may not be the same in the people living in Delhi. It can widely differ people living in Bhutan. So it is a culturally constructed notion of misery, happiness, health, and well-being, and this has been created through a power of knowledge relations, which is political, which is social, which is cultural, and it is created. So that the Foucault talked about a power that is called biopower, the power of the medical science professional to discipline our bodies, and they will find some problems, and they are the ones who will also have solutions, but you are always at the receiving end. So this approach, an isolated approach of dealing with the mental health problems at the world level. I am talking and including the DSM model also. I have a great question mark. It is not culture specific. It is not culture free. What dimensions of problems people in India, and how do they negotiate with their health style problems, mental health problems, and how do they negotiate with the diversity of crisis? So it cannot be same for people across all the regions. And the schizophrenia and all kind of mental health problems, at times it is also, overemphasized, so that, a problem in which so many types of mental problems are prevalent, and the diagnosis are easily available, and we should look forward to them for help. But this problem is somehow, not getting relevance in the contemporary times that I am talking to you right now at this moment. So the pursuit of well-being is also affected by cultural aspects. So medical science is always treating it in an isolated manner. Holistic view of biological, social, spiritual aspects are interdependent. So what is my faith system? Do I believe in God or not? That is not important. Do I believe in prayers? Do I pay attention to my praying capacities? And praying leads to devotion. Devotion leads to attentional, concentration. So attentional ability, perceptual ability, our altered states of consciousness, this can be improved. Not being religious or non-religious is not the point. Point is that spirituality play an important role in your mental health. But you show me any good theory of psychology which is talking and giving so much of importance. Because if they will give importance, so many myths of mental health professionals will fall flat. So it will. So if you do meditation every time, you do so many good things, you will not need any psychotherapy for us. So first they create a deficiency in your mind, and which is supported by psychosocial, medical, and all kinds of factors, economic factors, political factors, and expert factors. They are the experts. And if you see, whatever is the participants, I cannot see you all except Dr. Deji Rani. I am only able to see her. So what I am trying to tell you, just try to relate what the medical science has given you as a solution in the past 4 months. What confidence that this system has, because we have been ignoring all our reality that is already prevalent with us, and our egoistic pursuit of acquiring material wealth. So Indian pursuit of wellness argues that create a balance, developing a harmonious balance and matrix between inner directedness and outwardly being. The term Anthropocene is used in the context of pollution emissions that are produced from activities since the beginning of the agricultural revolution. Also applies to all major impacts on the environment. So many negative things that is taking place at the environment level in Assam, in Delhi, in Punjab, anywhere you see, there is a lot of things that is happening that should not have been happening. Human caused environmental and technological inventions have also contributed to the disturbances in ecology. Just you see, you must have been watching television today, the news of air crash in Kerala, but a simultaneous process is also taking place in Kerala. The problem of floods, which was not a problem, it is all taking place. Which I am not saying, even scientists are saying, because of the climatic changes, because so much of environmental degradation and environmental destruction has taken place, that these are resulting into flood-like situations and problems. Evaluating the impact of humans on natural communities required a good understanding and changes in biodiversity. So if I talk of mental health and if I am talking of biodiversity, how does it gets interconnected? These are interconnected. The speaker was talking that I get so much of satisfaction doing gardening. I am with my heart, mind, and soul. So yeah, these are the things that we need to explore. But we are, destroying our heart, mind, and soul, and we are trying to derive solace out of our destructive ability. Ecosystem restoration needs to be to incorporate network and evolutionary approaches to focus on long-term recovery of the complexity of ecosystem. Humans are the primary cause of the biodiversity extinction, habitat fragmentation called Holocene extinction. Defaunation is the loss of animals from ecological communities. There are other aspects, like you all have joined this webinar. You must be working somewhere. You all have work environments. You have work-life balance. And work-life balance is not an ordinary thing. It is not a static phenomena that you are working in college X, college Y, organization X. It has dynamics. It has dynamically changing environments, and for someone because it's a positive work-life balance can improve enhancing enrichment factors, and for some the context of work-life balance can be so detrimental that they are not happy at all. It is also affecting your mental health. So if you are worried from your boss, if you are working in an environment of anxiety, if you are working in an environment where people are doubting you, if they are creating barriers for your progress, and there is an organization where people are of each other, they believe in teamwork, does not it play an important role? This is my question to you. You think so? Work-life balance also play an important role in whatever you do, and mental health aspects are also interrelated between the work and non-work spheres of life, from individual to social level institution. Suppose you get all good things in your work environment, but your family level is not very happy, again you will not be a satisfied person. So this will cross over from one place to other and the other place to the one, and it will have a very deep impact on our mental health, wellness, and hygiene aspects. In the Western perspective, these mental health are treated in a mechanical way in which individuals attempt to achieve happiness as a goal. So today, if I think that all my life happiness will be completed in this 40 minutes talk with this webinar, it is not a product. It is a process reality. So everything that you do in a celebratory manner, but there they feel desires become important, and in order to achieve those desires, they are very much indulgent into their activity, where the dominance is that of attachment, not of detachment, and that attachment create more dissatisfaction in them when they are not able. So if you achieve your life goals in a process reality, I will talk to the people. There may be some of them may be satisfied, some of them may be dissatisfied, and some of them may be utterly dissatisfied. Some of them may have no response altogether. But I have a particular mindset that okay, my talking to this audience will have this kind of impact and will not have this kind of. So this fixity of goals leading to happiness is a source of dissatisfaction, which is very much highlighted in the Western perspective. Whether in Eastern perspective, this mental health and hygiene are aspects of the same spectrum. The objective realities of the world and subjective experiences are treated on a continuum. So sometimes you are happy, sometimes you are unhappy, sometimes you are both at the same time. So Eastern perspective of health and hygiene is dealt with the help of, you know, uh, with the help of so many concepts like Buddhism, Bhagavad Gita, and all kinds of things that we have, Jainism, Hinduism, all kinds of Eastern perspectives that gives you a very good understanding that, okay, mental health and well-being and hygiene is not an unitary concept. It is not an isolated concept. It needs to be, if you are a very happy person, you are the richest person in the city of Guwahati or Assam, but all other people in and around your city are suffering from poverty, you cannot feel happy. So it is a relational concept. It's a relative concept. It is interdependent from culture. If all are happy, then you will feel happy even despite of having some poverty or despite having some limitation. There are numerous examples, and when you will find the person who is traveling on bicycle is happier than the person who is, you know, traveling by Mercedes costly car that you may be knowing, but I know only these two, so I have mentioned. So the famous quote of the prayer, Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramaya, and Sarve Bhadrani Pasyantu Ma Kaschit Dukhbhagya Bhavet. May all be happy, may all be free from disease, may all perceive good, and may not suffer from sorrow. So that is the concept of wellness, that the Eastern theory of 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 mental health and hygiene. It is not mental health. Can you think that mental health and physical health are two different concepts, two different entities? No. Mental health, physical health, spiritual health. My mental health is perfect. I have high IQ, but I don't have, you know, good satisfaction in my social life, in my family life. How can you be happy? How the mental health? It's not a magic. It's not a miracle in an isolated way, which can be improved or not improved. Spirituality research shows that more spiritual persons use their spirituality to cope with life experiences may benefit their health and well-being. It may lead to better health, less hypertension, even during a time, and superior ability to handle stress. So a spiritual person, you will see that they rarely feel, you know, dissatisfied in their life activities, because they know that they can handle it, and they have a wider perspective of happiness and unhappiness. So even if they don't have much of, you know, satisfactions, Giddens, famous sociologist, considers socialization as a fundamental process in societies, and one of the main means by which societies are able to endure as their culture is passed down from generation to generation. So cultural aspects also play an important role, and living in a society that rejects aspects of your culture, such as identity, beliefs, sexual orientation, can have negative impacts on your well-being. Relating and connecting with culture can have positive impacts. Researchers have found credible evidence to support the assumption that societal and cultural factors appear to be conducive to citizens' happiness. So societal and cultural factors also makes us feel happy or unhappy. Happiness, which is strongly influenced by culture, is a strong predictor of physical health and longevity, both at individual level and at the societal level. So if you have a good culture of helping each other, and you are not so, you know, materialistically affluent, which is proposed in the Western society, you may achieve better level of health, hygiene, and mental wellness. The emergence of mass culture and popular culture led to the development of audiences as passive consumers, and their participation is limited to the choice of buying or not buying. So many things we are all doing in our day-to-day life, but we don't have much choice. In the mass culture, you have the choice of buying or not buying. You don't have the third choice. Mass culture threatens the hierarchy of taste, So whatever I am eating, whatever I am behaving, whatever I am dressing, so culturally enriched place. You have so many folk cultures in Assam. You have Bihu functions. You have so many traditional varieties. But you will unfortunately see that our distinctiveness and varieties of cultures is getting extinct, and we are adopting to a mass culture where Western music or Western music, whatever predominant music will take an important force, giving everybody the chance to choose what they think are the best books, films, musics, and paintings, images, so on. In the society of consumers, mass production does not require any more mass labor, and the poor ones are reserve army of labor and recast as flawed consumers. So spiritually, what is spirituality? Lots of time, whenever you are talking of spirituality, people want to confuse it with religiosity. Religiosity that obstructs you, that binds you, that this is this us and difference. It is not religiosity. It is religious indoctrination. And religiosity that liberates you is called spirituality. And spirituality involves search for higher values, inner freedom, and things that gives life meaning. Our unconscious is populated with the mostly unhappy, negative, and frustrating experiences which people want to forget but cannot because of strong emotional attachments to them. Negative emotional states are caused due to interaction with internalizing conflicting experiences. The tantalizing figure that promises but then disappears or withholds become a desirable deserter. We don't want to be unhappy, but there are so many things that is going in our unconscious mind. Who is she? Who is he? The gender, the region, the education. So these categorizations also creates so many kind. I am poor, rich. So it is also creating a kind of conflict that creates a desirable deserter within us, while the aggressive and persecutory figure forms a hated denier. So dominance of deserter can lead a pathological situation towards life where we are afraid to love, while the denier can lead us to a depressive position marked by fear and anger. Anxiety is a kind of pain, and owing to inconsistency of good and bad, we develop such as depression. And there is a psychologist called Winnicott refers to transitional spaces in the person as intermediate area of experiencing to which inner reality and external reality both contribute. So transitional spaces are constituted by our inner life spaces and external realities both. Spiritual activities or even prayer, as I told you, provides a holding environment and transitional space where creative work and growth can take place. Sustained attention, which is necessary in most spiritual prayers, is assisted by activity in the context. Activities in the cortex. There are evidences of trophotropic producing relaxed yet vigilant mental state as in meditation. So there are scientific evidences. The scientific journals, the best of the Lancet journals and best of the medicine journals, they are also publishing sufficient number of articles that spirituality is contributing to our wellness and mental wellness and overall wellness. Spirituality practices offer transformational mechanisms that help a person to adapt to reflexibility and avoid fixedness. This I-ness, my-ness, me-ness, limitations of materials. This leads to a fixedness kind of quality in us. And spiritual autobiography, this is also can help a person trace his life journey. कई बार आप देखेंगे that you will find people that they have been following a rat race, mad race to become something, and when they achieve, then they think that I have lost. what the previous speaker was speaking just a short while ago. I think I'll be concluding in 5 to 7 minutes. Is that okay, Dr. Deji? Dr. Deji,
Yeah, sir. You can continue.
So it is 9:35. I will conclude by 9:4.
Yeah, you can take another 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's sufficient. So spiritual well-being is associated with better self-reported health and status among geriatric population. So if you do this, find the studies, then you will find those people who are involved in spiritual activity. I'm again and again re-emphasizing that you can be religious, you cannot be, that can be, but spiritual activities are not necessarily religious activity. Even if you are doing a social work, okay, if you are helping people for reading books, gentleman Apurva Datta is popularizing the habit of book reading. There are many others who are doing different kinds of activities. That is also, if you are teaching people from a poor background, that is also a spiritual work. So spirituality is not domain specific. It is not found within the four walls of temples, mosques, and churches. It's not like that. Spirituality is in your approach. Spirituality is in your orientation. Spirituality can be reflected in each and everything that you do. And whenever your I-ness takes a secondary stage and you improve your we-ness, where other social pathways and cultural activities and social activities, they are taking importance. It means you are engaging into a spiritual activity. So spiritual activity should not be misunderstood just merely as a religious activity. If you are religious, well and good. If you are not, that is not the requirement of being spiritual only. So Indian perspective of spirituality is multidimensional in nature. It is one search for meaning in life. People doing their day-to-day life activities can also do spiritual activity. It's not that spirituality is only domain specific. It is also not position specific. It is also not situation. Even if you are rearing your child, the love and devotion and the commitment that you are rendering to her is very important. Similarly, the interconnectedness with the diverse beings and the attitude of compassion for all is very much required in spiritual activities. There is no specific rule to achieve success in a spiritual journey. Rather, every person has his or her way of, discovering. I cannot be the guardian or judge what mental health professionals do, that you have this problem, you need this solution in this manner, in this perspective, with this. So it is also reflecting a process of bondage. So how it can be liberating? This spirituality is an experience of transcendence. It is we must overcome this desirable deserter within us, hated denier within us, and we should talk about the spiritual autobiography. We have to understand the cultural dynamics, the social dynamics. So mental health, mental hygiene, and mental illness, this needs to be understood in a wider perspective of our individual activities, individual existence, social existence, cultural existence, and spiritual existence. So, and environmental well-being, which is not very much highlighted. So all these things can play a contributory role, or they can play a destructive role if we think that only our house and our individual activities we can improve our mental health. I am telling you, it is the cultural specific phenomena and the cultural matrix, because here in India you see the behavior aspect that we take lot of care what others are saying about us. In different culture, people will talk about themselves, but they forget to me concept what was being said just a short while ago. So to me is here. To me means my family, my friends, my husband, my children. So to me is not a unitary concept. And my environment, my surrounding, my society, my culture, my meaning of existence in life. Am I contributing to enrichment or I am not? So all these things can contribute a holistic picture of mental health, mental hygiene. And whenever you will be thinking that WHO will produce a vaccine and all our problems will be solved, I am telling you again, you will be chasing an illusion of the highest order. It may come, it may not come, but solutions lie within this interconnectedness of understanding the reality of our existence. And mental health is not as an isolated concept, it is a related concept of relatedness with our social, cultural, and spiritual aspects that needs to be understood. And the consumerist culture and the role of power and knowledge in medical health concept of suffering and medicalization of problems, we need to be mindful about the consumerist ideals of medicalization regime, and we should be mindful about this. I think I have spoken enough for Dr. Deji, and if you can invite some questions from the audience, maybe I'll try to handle them for 4 or 5 questions at least, that I would love to. And more questions, I know you are also getting late for your dinner, but have a spiritual dinner tonight. And I am so thank you all, Dr. Deji, Dr. Parul Bhuiya, Dr. Amulya Bora, Apurva Datta, the main person behind this whole activity. I congratulate him because he is very active for doing all kinds of good things. I wish you all the best. Thank you. Dhanyavad.
Thank you, sir. Now we are heading towards this discussion session. I'm taking the first question. The first question is, how can we remove our mental stress?
Yeah. As I told you, mental stress can be removed when you have some larger objectives, when your mental stress is not limited to me as an individual. If you see the mental stress and the actual stress of the people in the society, you will find that you are a very fortunate person. So it depends upon your orientation, that how much importance do you give to your individual limitation, or you give importance to your individual liberation. So it is a social, cultural, and spiritual interconnectedness problem. So how do you perceive your life conditions? Many people, you can notice, Mr. Datta, that the attendance of people going to hospitals was very much a psychological problem. That I have some problems and we call the doctors. It was sad. And when the corona crisis came, people started running away from the hospitals, and they are well, majority of them, except very serious conditions problem. I am telling you, hospital people got anxious that we have no patients and how will we survive. So it is a product of your mental mechanisms, where you understand that stress is not a product, that today I have got, this month I have got 60,000 and next month I will get 1 lakh. You can manage in both the conditions. A lot depend upon your orientations, except I am telling you few problems which are very genuine that needs medical attention, and you must, I am not negating the importance of problems, but the politics, the economics, and the consumerism aspects, so many things you can handle at your home that you have been doing for past 4 months, and you had no need to go to a doctor. So I think mental stress varies from person to person, place to place, culture to culture, and it is not a simple cause and effect phenomena, rather it is a relational problem. Thank you, Mr. Datta. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Next question is
your question.
No, sir, not my question. I am the moderator, sir.
Okay, sir. I thought you have so many questions. Then what I will do with others' questions? Yeah.
No, sir. No, sir.
Yeah, please.
The next is how can we improve the mental hygiene in rural community?
Mental hygiene in rural community.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Again, I told you they have a very good resilient capacity, rural community. But yes, some of them who have some serious problems, then community awareness that okay, they should be very active and participating. They should be not treating somebody who has genuine mental problem or mental illness. It should, because in rural conditions in all parts of India, it is also treated as stigma that okay, she has or he has some problem. So that stigma should be removed through awareness programs that okay, somebody has some difficulty, then it should be removed. And the setup of rural people is such that some of them have problems which is not only psychological in nature, but it is also relational and physiological, and some economics aspects are also related. So it should not be treated in isolation, but a lots of awareness aspect that somebody has problems despite leading a good, healthy and happy life, then yes, they need to be taken care of through experts who are dealing with those problems, and there should be a genuine kind of awareness, and it should not be misconstrued in the form of stigma and stereotypes and some false notions that devil has cast her mind, some ghosts have taken over him or her. So such type of things also happens in India, and that needs to be seriously and taken care of at a community level. Yeah.
Okay, sir. The next one
Yeah.
is how the adjustment mechanism or defense mechanism helps the human being to this mental adjustment.
Yes, Datta Sahab, the whole 40 minutes, I think I will have to demand another 40 minutes next day. I have been talking about this only, that mental adjustments are not an isolated component. Mental adjustments are generated from your individual, social, cultural, work-life balance, spiritual aspects. So it's a related concept, and all these contribute to your mental wellness or illness. So all your adaptability should be geared in such a manner that you are trying to take advantage of everything. So if you think that my mobile is my only source of socialization, it is not going to help you. You have to take into the considerations the connectedness of social energy, the cultural aspects. So the people who are more involved in some meaningful activity are less stressful in general, and they have to find their own way, because I don't have a prescription. I am not a doctor from medical science that I can provide you antibiotics for controlling stress. You have to find your own way, and I am sure that everybody will have enormous opportunities of having a good life and a life limit of limitations. So you have to develop that understanding that what is the best that you can do in the given circumstances, and you start performing. So sitting idle, being passive, just thinking, pondering that one day my time will come and I'll become most famous on this earth, it rarely happens. So you have to create your favorable conditions in a systematic manner and in a day-to-day manner. That is how you can overcome stress. Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. There is one more question.
I'll be ready to answer two also.
Okay, sir. So how can someone maintain the mental hygiene during this pandemic, where we have developed a sense of mutual fear, intolerance, and disbelief for one another?
Yeah. Who is the questioner? I would like to know his or her name.
Tapas Kumar Bharali, sir. His name is Tapas Kumar. Yeah.
Tapas Kumar, thank you for asking a good question. This is Yeah, it is also Tapas Kumar is also a, a unique situation that mankind has been facing, and it's not a problem of normal nature. It's a problem that mankind is facing of such magnitude for the very first time. There had been, epidemics in the past also, in earlier centuries also, but it is one of the it's a pandemic of the incredible magnitude, so unprecedented manner. So the solutions are not very simple, but as you have asked me, I don't have prescription that I can prescribe you, but you have to find your ways that okay, something has happened, then gradually the things have started easing. So it had a lot of enormous amount that was psychological in nature. So initially people were washing their hands so many times, now the number is reduced. Initially people were fearing out to go out of there. So you maintain some social distance and all the things that is being prescribed, but to have a fear or not to have fear in mind, a lot depends upon your involvement in the activities, as was rightly mentioned by the previous speaker also, that you have to find your own way, that okay, this is a paradigm shift in the social structure of our society, in the health scenario. This is a very serious level problem. So we need to gear up ourselves to behave in a modified way, so that we don't visit places which is not prescribed, which is not suggested, which is not crowded, but still you can manage to do things, because best way to avoid fear is to fight it out. So if you avoid fear, then it will take its place in you. So you face it by adopting and adapting to better ways of living. And I am sure that somebody will have music, somebody will have social work, somebody will have athletic activities. So all the activities people have started doing. I would have been in this what you say, Guwahati, for this webinar, but now I am connecting, but still I am relating with you all. So you have to bring some modifications in your behavior, because if you think whatever you were doing in the past, again you will be doing in the same manner, then you might face some difficulty. So if you modify your ways, I am sure you will get more satisfaction and more happiness in life. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Though there are lots of questions in the chat box, I think due to the time constraint, we should stop here because
What?
it's already 10.
All
10
great people are there, so don't worry, sir. Then, yeah.
Okay, sir.
So I think that Mridula Hazarika is ready to thank you, not a vote of thank you. Is it the case?
Before that, sir, before that,
Yeah.
on behalf of the collaborators, myself,
Yeah.
Suraj Gogoi, I would like to offer my sincere thanks to Professor Dr. Naveen Kumar sir and Surabhi Setia madam for your nice presentation, and I hope your presentation will enlighten all the participants. And thank you once again. Good night, sir. Now, I request
Yeah.
Mridula Hazarika ma'am to please continue.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Naveen Kumar sir, for enlightening us by your valuable and inspirational speech covering social, cultural, spiritual aspects related to health and healthy lifestyle. Hope the participants learned a lot from your talk as you deliberate very nicely. The entire session is very much fruitful, highly relevant. Once again, thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and giving your valuable.
So thank you, Mridula, Deji, Parul, Amulya Bora, Apurva Datta, and all the participants who stayed with me. I think the number is going down. So whatever may be the number, so I also very much enjoyed being with you all this evening. Thank you for your organizing of this webinar, and I wish you all the best to all of you and on to this organization which is doing real good work. Thank you.
Now, I think it's time for vote of thanks. Now, may I request Dr. Daisy Rani Sutia ma'am to offer the vote of thanks?
Sir.
Thank you, Lisba. Good evening and good morning to all the participants. Now we come to the last part of this webinar, that is the vote of thanks. We are grateful to respected resource ma'am, Mrs. Surabhi Saikia from Florida, and respected sir, Dr. Naveen Kumar from Delhi. With their cooperation in the webinar, we were able to gather knowledge in the topic. Hope to receive this cooperation in the future. We will be ever grateful to our inaugurator and secretary, Oitizo Ekhona, Dr. Amulya Kumar Borua, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science, Mr. Upen Datta from Golaghat, advisor of Oitizo Ekhona. We offer our heartfelt thanks to all the participants for their active cooperation in the webinar, which made it very fruitful. We offer our heartfelt thanks to Mr. Suraj Gogoi, coordinator of LISPA, and his associates from Nahakotia College. Last but not the least, we offer our special thanks to Parul Bhuya ma'am from Kanpur College, Mridola Hajorika from Komargaon College, and AD Creation 01 YouTube channel. We are grateful to all well wishers. Thank you. Thank you again. Over to Lisba.
Thank you, ma'am. Then I think I should close the application